Welcome to the Branded Impact Podcast. On this show, we go beyond surface level branding, honest conversations with industry leaders, behind the scenes of aligned brand building, and actionable insights to help you elevate your presence. I'm your host, Jocelyn Espejo, aka Jo. Hit subscribe and join me each week for the Branded Impact Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Kacie Lett Gordon, co-founder of It All Media, a media and coaching company helping women navigate transitions of circumstance or mindset. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by change, unsure where to focus your energy, or like you're doing all of the things without seeing traction, this conversation is for you. So, Kacie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for having me today. I think personally and in our business, we're in a bit of like a shedding phase and working to shed some of those old stories and allow some of the new ones that are coming forward in this, iteration and moment of our business.
You definitely hit on the fact that we get to pivot and change and evolve.
Thank
And
God.
if you're new into entrepreneurship, the sooner that you can own that fact, the easier your journey will be. That's something that I've struggled with over the years. And it sounds like you're in that shedding phase where you realize what you started and what the intention was initially has evolved and shifted. And sometimes this toying like of a tug of war between, I really feel aligned with this direction that I want to go in, but I've done all this work and I have built all of this over here and I don't want to
Mm.
let that go. I guess
Take me to
really
church,
quick,
Joe. Take me to church. Yes,
really quick,
you're
where are
nailing
you
it.
now versus where were you 5 years ago?
Yeah. So we are, as you said, a media and coaching company. And for us, the underpinning foundation of everything is storytelling. The power of story, both individually and collectively, is something that really only the past, 5, 10 years of my life, I've come to understand in the magnitude that it is. The most important story that any of us tell is the one we tell ourselves. And that is why we start with individual story through the lens of coaching. So the company was founded out of what we now lovingly call my fuck it all moment. And that happened for me about 6.5, almost 7 years ago when I had my first daughter. Spent the first 10 plus years of my career in corporate. I was a chief marketing officer, chief strategy officer. I was building a lot of other people's companies and a lot of other people money. And I became a first time mom and simultaneously was promoted to senior vice president. In theory, I thought, oh my God, I have it all. And in practice, the giggle that I see coming from you knows that that was an absolute insane period of life.
100%.
And 6 months postpartum, I found myself wanting to drive my car off the road. I've yet to meet a working parent or mom of any kind that is shock and awe when I tell them that. It is a pretty universal experience that the pressure of new parenthood, especially on mothers who are also working outside the home, is near impossible. And so that right there was a story I was embodying, the story of having it all. And so when my lived reality became a very stark difference from what I expected that to be, it sent me into a full identity crisis. It was the undoing of every story. I'm a millennial woman who was raised in the girl boss lemonade. I had a single mom. I was, the only woman, the youngest. I was SVP before I was 30, all of these things. And yet, as I was stepping into this new role of motherhood and building a family and really feminine power and energy, I found myself really not knowing who I was. And so I had this depth and breadth of experience and skill sets and accolades and titles, and yet my satisfaction and success and mental health was not there. And so what I have found through this experience of going through my own experience of that is that initially I thought, well, I must be the only one in the world. This was 2019 coming into early 2020. The public dialogue on mental health, on systemic breakdowns, on the pressure inequities, gender inequities that we see amongst men and women was not as public as it is today. But in going through that experience, I felt alone. And I remember the day I wanted to drive my car off the road, I thought, wow, I have a partner who I can go home and say this to, and we can come up with a plan. I am not at risk of not being able to pay my mortgage. I can still have health insurance, right? Like real things that are very important. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so important to talk about the brass tacks piece of that, because sometimes we talk about it in this like, just do what you love. And it's like, I can only do that if I'm like safe and secure in my life that I'm also building.
Right.
So much narrative on that, right?
I remember the vice president at the time telling me how she was rocking her newborn while she was working. Like there was
And
this,
set it as like a gold star.
yes, like a badge of honor. Like I was the woman that gave birth and literally started working the next hour. And I had this mental thing of I'm living the career life that I wanted. I'm on the track for what I sought out after, and I wanted none of it. And then it was a complete identity crisis.
Yes.
And that's the burn it down. I was I came to a crossroad where for me, it wasn't driving off the road. It was, I'm getting a divorce. I'm getting rid of my dog. And the only thing that's allowed to stay is my son. The rest of it, like I'm burning it all down and everything has
Yes.
to go. And my husband looked at me and he goes, "Hey, so before you divorce me, how about you quit your job? And then we'll talk about our marriage and the dog and, like all the other things that you want to burn down." But
Yes.
yes, this is a reality where a lot of women who thought that career was important and they got very ambitious and they were very successful young. Once they
Yes.
have a child, it's a whole different mindset shift. And by the way, it's okay. And it's also okay if you decided to be the person that was still a priority and everything else worked in
Yes.
your favor. I think ultimately it's whatever you're drawn to is okay for you. That's what you're talking about. That's your story. That's what you get to embrace and you get to own.
Completely. And I think that's where, I think when I talk to especially a lot of male or traditionally male entrepreneur spaces, they don't always understand the like soft tissue that connects the two sides of our business. And yet, when I talk to the women, especially those that exist that have many, that are the multi hyphenates, that occupy many roles and identities simultaneously and have experienced the shortcomings of systems of quote unquote traditional success, there is such a deeper understanding. And so that individual story, like we just talked about, that was mine. And what happened when I then had this identity shift and crisis, it was a crisis of the moment to say, okay, everything I've believed up until this point just shifted. There then becomes a lens by which I began to see the world and question what other stories am I intentionally, to use our word at the top of the conversation, choosing for myself, or which ones am I default inheriting that maybe weren't designed with this version of me, or maybe me at all. Like, I think that's something. And so that's where the macro storytelling and social impact and systems change and social justice piece of our work starts, because all of these women that we're talking to that we coach, these are high achieving women. These are women that, to your point, have accomplished a lot early in their career. They have the titles, they have earned the money, they have sat in the rooms and they're saying, this isn't it. So it's not that there is a version of the world in which we are limited by the glass ceiling and that, but these are women that in many cases have accomplished the very traditional versions of success. And all the promise of that did not give them the life that they were seeking. And so in that, they then begin to look at the systems that we occupy. And so our company, like the underpinning kind of like secret goal is I want women as equal and valued architects of the systems that run our lives at work, at home, and in our communities. I'm not saying women are better, but I'm saying that there is an inequity in us as architects of the systems that run our lives. I was working in tech and consulting. Everyone I worked with I'll give a small asterisk. The majority of people I worked with were straight, married, white men who likely came from some position of maybe like family access, generational wealth, or having resources. And so when I looked at their version of family, it was not the same as mine. It was not the same as being a parent or a mother that carries a child and the physical toll that takes on you, as breastfeeding and having to like go into a closet when you're on a work trip and, like it was a different reality. And so as I started to look around and do that, I started to question everything. And we find that consistently with the women, especially those that choose entrepreneurship. because you're building in a different way. You're building adjacent to the system. And you're like, do I want to bring that into my company? Is that important? And so the storytelling piece is I started a podcast when I left my company. I took it was supposed to be a 3-month sabbatical to do nothing. I started the podcast 6 days in. I thought that was going to be a creative project. It ended up being the thing. And so in hindsight, I would have taken the 3 months. I wouldn't have just done 6 days, but I so desperately needed that like act of creativity and creating something and using my voice and kind of like talking my way through it. And so the podcast was called Fuck It All: Modern Women Redefining What It Means to Have It All. This was in the fall of 2020. It was COVID. It was Great Resignation. It was the summer after we saw tremendous protest around Black Lives Matter. There was collective questioning. And so it was very prime time. And I started, to go in the lens of this podcast. I had built a really good personal brand. The 3 pillars of my corporate personal brand were connect people, create value, and change what it means to be a woman in business. And so when I went out on my own and said, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, what if I tell 10 stories and send it out to my network that I had fostered for a very long time? In the first week, I had a backlog of 100 stories.
You open the door, and there's all these people that had stories that were holding them back because it wasn't almost accepted. They felt
Yes.
alone. And they're like, no, I must be crazy because if I go out and tell you I'm an SVP and I want to walk away from it, people are going to look at me sideways. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not happy? What do you mean you want to walk away from that? And whatever that looks like it could
Yes.
be whatever your definition of success, because that's also something I've had
Oh my
to look
gosh,
at
yes.
years. You have to write down what does success look like, because for those of us that are very ambitious, I liked how you called it multi hyphenate. Like it's one of those things where I realized I kept moving the bar. And so I kept feeling like I wasn't making it. I hadn't achieved something. I hadn't attained this level. And then one of the days I sat down and realized, oh my gosh, I'm living the life that I dreamed about like 5 years ago. Never thought I was going to get here. But then I got here, I passed it, and now I moved the bar. So I'm sitting here thinking like I haven't attained something. But you opened the door and you said, hey, I'm sharing a story. And by the way, I made it to someone's definition of success, to my previous version of a definition of
Yes.
success. And I don't like it. And I want to change it. And you had the courage to go out and do something about it.
Yes, we always say that we are for women with a restless discontent for something more and a bias to create it. And it's the latter part that I think really sets apart entrepreneurs, is that many of us have a restless discontent as humans, of an unsteadiness or an evolution of what we want, but that bias to create. And for me, entrepreneurship it has been probably the most spiritual journey of my life, of having to really attune to what is it that I believe and want. To your point, what do I want my day to day
Right.
to look like? And am I willing to do that if other people are not able to understand it or approve of it?
Right. And
And
by the way, if I pivoted once, you can do it again. 'Cause I
yes.
don't know about you, but when I went out on my own, I had a vision. I thought,
Mhm,
this is what I
mhm,
want to do. This is great.
mhm.
And then a year in, I went, this is not what I like. Why am I doing this? I am choosing to go put myself into a situation that makes me physically tired, that I don't look
Mhm.
forward to anymore. And I'm like, oh, wait, this was by design. Like I created this. And then,
Isn't that so funny? And I think it's so important to hear, because we think that like we do it once and then we're experts of like, oh, I would never do that again. And then I look up 18 months later, I'm like, babe, we're doing that exact same thing again that we said we didn't want to do.
exactly, exactly. And then just having the courage and realizing it's okay. And I think you mentioned, for me, a lot of it comes down to, and I'm going to say this, and one of these days I'm actually going to believe it. It's we are our brand. And we can start to talk about, and if you can provide value, you can pivot and people will be okay. You will attract it. And I have pivoted my business now. I think I'm 6 years in, and I'm now pivoting again. And I'm like, it's fine. It really is okay. And then it's just figuring out. And this time I'm taking it from a different approach. I feel like I tried it before in a few different ways on what do I think is going to make me the most money? Can it also give
Yes.
me the time freedom? Like, is it, all these pieces? Now I'm flipping the script and I'm like, nope, we're going to design the life that I want to live and then figure out the business that will fit into that versus building the business and then trying to fit the life I want to live somewhere in the middle. Because entrepreneurship, if you're not careful, we all leave in some ways. Time freedom is one of the key factors most people go out on their own for.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but I have struggled with time freedom ever since I went out on my own because I left the 9 to 5 to work in my mind 24/7. And then
Mhm.
the unrest, you went on a 3 month sabbatical, made it 6 days. I think that's something to say too about the spirit. We have a hard time resting. Like
My
that is a
God, it's
story that we have told ourselves that if we are at
and
rest,
society reinforces.
yes, yes,
It's not until you have a full mental break, people are like, "Why didn't you rest?" It's like, well, because nobody was okay with that before. When I was
right.
like, "Hey, guys, I'm kind of not feeling well," everybody was just, "Keep going, girl."
You got it. Just push through.
Yes,
It's what we do.
just push through. It is. Just get another cup of coffee. Just, meditate. All of those things are great, but real rest is so important. And it is, as far as entrepreneurship goes, like, I think some of the beliefs that I had at the beginning versus now are, I kept thinking of like scaling. Like that was a thing. And I think in the entrepreneurship space, we talk about that. And now I've swapped scale for sustainable. Like, what's sustainable to me? Like, how can I think about it? Like, every financial person is like, don't give $500 to your saving and then $10,000 and then 200. Give every month the lowest consistent sustainable amount, and that will yield a higher return every single time than bouncing around, because the emotional narrative there, oh my God, I can't do what I did last month. Like, that has been a rewiring for sure. The other piece is um, recognizing that I've been through enough creative cycles now, to your point around pivots and iterations and peak seasons and slow seasons, to realize that rest is a part of the process. When I am feeling uninspired, burnout, irritable, whatever you're recognizing of, that you are in need of rest, when it shows up 100 times out of 100, when I rest, I am better and the business is better for it. But every single time I fight it, kicking and screaming, I don't wanna, until my body's like, "No, you're gonna lay in bed." Sometimes it can be, like, physically actually sick, or just, like, you hit that mental wall, and so I think this is where a peer set of entrepreneurs is also so important, and women entrepreneurs to be able to say, like, "Oh, yeah, I struggle with that too, and I still did it," and being able to have a mirror to one another to say, like, "You might also need that."
Yeah. Because I think we can eagle eye view somebody else's business. I can look at somebody else and see what you need to do so much faster than myself. And or I give other people so much more grace than I want to give myself. So I think that peer network has been instrumental and life-saving for me. And I think the podcast is an excellent thing. I know for me, the podcast has been an amazing outlet to be able to have conversations and just hear how alike we all are. Like a lot of it comes down to the same, and there seems to be the same theme. It's like authenticity, but then now we're shifting back into, I'm starting to hear less and less about scaling and more about sustainability. What can I do? What
Yes.
can I create? What does
Yes.
that look like? And then truly leaning back into what is the life that you really want to live? Because we can talk about revenue numbers. We can talk about how big you want a company to get, but what is that going to look like? What is that going to do? How many hours does that pull you away from your family? What does that do? And then really at the end of the day, what is it that you need? And so sticking to those values, and I have to remind myself because I get very ambitious. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I'm like, hold on a minute. Now I've started really prioritizing work. Now I'm saying yes to things that has me out at night and on the weekends or whatever the case may
Yes.
be. And I'm like, oh wait, this wasn't what I wanted. So when I go to say yes, I have to start by asking, does this align with my core values? Does this align with bringing me more joy or getting me closer to time freedom? Or if it's a commitment that's going to require me being away for a significant amount more time, not the season. And
Yeah.
we're finding more and more people that are understanding and accepting that versus getting the questions. I think,
I
and I
think
think
the
this is
season
somewhere that I
piece
think
is
you guys are providing so much value to. It's the coaching and the mentorship. That has been a game changer for me because doing it alone, and I'll tell you what, made lots of mistakes. And I put myself
yeah.
in positions where if I would have had a mentor sooner or a coach looking at it being asking some legit questions where It could be different for everybody, but some key questions or, yeah, I've tried that. Let me tell you how that worked out for me. And doesn't mean that it'll 100% be your story, but having that coaching in that space where you can walk alongside somebody to give them the permission to explore what is your story? What do you want it to be? And then let's map
Completely.
out what that's going to look like and how we can get you there.
And I love that you said seasons because that story looks different. It looks different when you are navigating real life things, whether it's caregiving for your kids or parents or dealing with your own health. It's different when you have capacity and energy to be ambitious and chase. It looks different when you are dealing with just life like and that attunement. And I think that's something that our frameworks. So, in interviewing all the women on the podcast, many of them are entrepreneurial in nature or entrepreneurs. And so I think that we do have to develop a different discipline around like self discipline because there's not always the external, this is what today looks like. And much of that is energy management that I find, at least for myself as an entrepreneur. And so what I realized is that many of these women had done the prescribed version of success. And I think that's probably most of us, right? And that maybe is part of the hero's journey or like life in itself. And then we hit a point where the external no longer aligns to the internal. And I think that there are certain levels of success that we attain to validate that, right? Like, oh, if I'm only a manager and I'm not feeling successful, maybe it'll come when I'm a director. Oh, I don't feel it as a director. Maybe it'll come when and so we like get whatever, whether it's the earning, the title, the whatever it is. And then at some point you're like, no, 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 I've like done enough and this still isn't feeling good. So then that sends us backwards, not from an outward in, but to then say like, okay, well, let me start excavating inside. Like, what is it that I would want? Let me start defining that. And then after we go through both individually, and we've seen this with our women, is like, then there's a desire to bring others onward of like, okay, I have experienced this and like, I know how painful and isolating and like, awful it was to have these identity crisis moments. Like, I don't want anybody to feel alone. Like, I'm sure so much of this podcast was born from like, I have a lot of lessons learned. And if I could offer that, that's worthwhile. And so our process is inward, outward, onward for that exact reason. Like, how do you go inward to attune what it is you want? I can't know outwardly what's going to be successful if I don't first know myself internally. And as women, as people, but certainly as women who often are the caregivers and facilitators of joy in our communities, of structure in our families, the badass, very ambitious people in our jobs, there's not always space held for us to just go inward without it being like in service of someone or something. And so that felt revolutionary for me. And it felt revolutionary for the women we were doing with to say, like, hey, could we facilitate you inward? To get to know yourself and name these things that, to your point, like actually are successful. And every time a woman comes to us, she comes to us with what she thinks the external fix is. She's like, I just need a new job. Like you said, your husband, like we're getting a divorce and the dog's leaving and I'm just going to take my kid and he's like, what if we just gave you capacity? What if we gave you space to think? And so every single person, and this is human nature, right? It's kind of like fight or flight, like just get me out of this situation. And so they always come to us with an outward fix and they fight us many of the times when we're like, we're going to go slow and we're going to go inward. They're like, but I want to go fast and I want to just create change. And it's learning that patience and like urgency doesn't have to dictate everything. Like you're allowed to hit pause and have that reflection. And when you do, the outward moves so much faster. It feels counterproductive, but a solid foundation. So you can say that works, that doesn't. This fits what I need, this doesn't. Your decision making is so much faster. When you're having to pivot, it's not so painful because you're like, I don't even know why this is broken. It's instead rooted in, I know exactly why this isn't aligned. And I can make a decision intentionally. And then that onward piece is like, I'm going to impart the wisdom because it feels good. It's a hard earned lesson. And wouldn't you know that the minute you solve, whether it's personal, professional, family, some other part of life will pop off. And then you have this framework of inward, outward, onward to now apply to whatever other area is starting to have friction. And that's life. Like, I think that is probably going to be, it is probably going to be true in perpetuity for all of us of all time. And to accept that evolution and pivots and change it allows the process to be met, I find, with more expectancy than anxiety. It's not, oh my God, what if this falls apart? It's like, hey, this is likely going to change. What is revealing itself?
Well, and because we've pivoted somewhere, and that's been a core part of our identity. And I know that as I've done the internal work, and I think it's that discomfort that makes us really realize that we have to make a change. Because if not, then we just stay in the status quo. And then we wake up 18 months later or 2 years later, and you're like, cool, I've just done the same thing over and over and over again. But it's this I don't belong in this version of myself right now. And then when you start to make shifts, and if it's internal, then all of a sudden your boundaries have shifted and the things that you accepted before you no longer accept. And you're going to see that that does carry out not only in your professional, but then in your personal, because you're starting to live, at least for me, what I have found is as I start to align to those boundaries, I start to realize where I was letting them be crossed over or where I continuously put other people first. And then now it's that shift, and I start to see it in all of the places. So, yes, I kind of think it's what you said. Just expect it. Know that as you start to pivot and you really lean in, there is going to be friction. There is going to be change because we are creatures of habit. So, very often, whatever we've allowed in one area of our life, we've allowed similar circumstances, different players, but similar circumstances all the way across. So then when you make those pivots, then all of a sudden you start to notice everywhere how there was misalignment. But I love how you
Completely.
said if you just hold on to the why, like this is what I want. And then you can make decisions based on does that align? It's alignment. It's
Yes.
I think we've been striving for, and I've been hearing the word balance for so long. And I
Mhm.
remember one of the doctors in the networking group told me one time, he goes, you're never going to have balance. It's just not a thing. Stop striving for balance. And I remember thinking, like, how odd, right? Because we all talk about balance. We want this work life balance. We want balance in all the things.
Yeah.
And I've decided to chuck the word balance. And I'm like, I just want alignment. Like, I just
Yes.
want to feel aligned in my decisions. And that even plays into right now, I'm about to walk into soccer tournament season. We had a season of rest. We only had 2 practices a week.
Yep.
And now I am walking into 3 practices a week with multiple tournaments coming up. But I'm not upset about it because this is what I'm choosing right now. I am choosing to be the present soccer mom, right? So when it does get hard, and my one friend and I love you find the people that do the crazy with you. Okay. So like I've got the one friend that our boys play together and our daughters play together. And we were
Mhm.
the sidelines in Jacksonville for the morning game, driving back to Orlando to see the boys play, to turn around and go back to Jacksonville to try to catch
Mhm. That
the
is
game.
a good friend right there. That a road trip friend is real.
Amazing. And because we get to do both sidelines. So we're like, yes. And we're the crazy ones, like literally like, love you guys. It was an amazing game. We're back out the door so we can try to get back to watch the girls. And the long story of it, people look at me and go, you're freaking crazy. And I go, no, this aligns for me. So the hard isn't hard. Like, yeah, it's
Yep.
hard. I'm in the car, I'm driving, I'm on the go consistently. But for this season of my life, for this phase of my life, I want to be there. So I am willing to do the hard things and they don't feel hard to me. It just comes, it's second nature to me because it's in alignment fully with the version of myself that I want to be. When I can make those decisions confidently, then it is easier to make the harder ones when normally it felt like, and I don't know, you can probably reflect and see the ones that cause the most friction are the ones that are going against everything in your gut, where you're saying the yes, but you know you shouldn't be. And then you're saying the yes because of a should. That's, I should be doing this.
Mhm.
Whose definition of should? Like, what is that? What does that look like? So when it comes to branding, because this is one where I'm going to lean in with the shoulds, there are so many things that we are
So
told
many.
you should do. With all of this that you've learned in your years of making your significant pivots, because leaving an SVP position, and I came from corporate to now go like on, I'm like, that was a significant pivot. And
Mhm.
then out of all the stories that you've heard, what's one of the things that you hear often that people do that you think could be done differently because they're doing it as a should versus an alignment decision?
Yeah. I think that right now we are in a really interesting time of personal brand. I think personal brand likely is more important than it's ever been in like, at least in my view. I think that before there was, entrepreneurship is more common now, especially amongst women. We are seeing a rise in the number of women entrepreneurs. I think that, and just people opting for entrepreneurship. I think some of it is out of desire, some of it is out of the system, like layoffs, people are being forced into entrepreneur, and some people are choosing entrepreneurship. So I think that's an interesting piece. To me, personal brand that is built on trying to one emulate somebody's, like we all have the person in our industry that you're like, oh, I wish I was amazing. I have them. Trust me. There's people that I like fangirl so hard and also get like the pit in my stomach. Like, here she is again doing the thing I could do. There's also the like jealousy, the resentment. And I think like being real with that. There's the people that you respect and admire. There's people that like, damn it, they're doing it awesome again. I have found, and I have done it sometimes knowingly, many times unknowingly, emulating their style never works sustainably. Like that is the piece. So I think that what I really try to do when I see something that I'm really like, I get a reaction of, like whether it's like, oh, I wish I thought of that, or I just love it. I try to think about how was that so in alignment for them? Like, what about their brand is so in alignment? So, like, sometimes I love people that are like hot takes and they're just really good at like social media, they're like, and they're in the car but they're giving like such wisdom. I love my critical mind, but I am not short winded. I'm a verbose lady. And so when I try to do like a hot take, people are like, I feel like you skipped like 90% of it just doesn't land. But I have found like long form content and podcast emails, love it. They're where I shine. And so like I have tried to emulate what other people are doing, and it comes up short every time. And I think what happens and people don't realize is like your audience feels that. They
Yes.
feel the misalignment. They feel, and not even like the cringe up, but they just feel like, I don't really know that was like them. And so a lot of it, I think, has to start with what is it that where you shine? Like, what is it the thing? And so, for instance, some of it might be that, hey, like, I'm the network person. I'm the person that I need to go have the coffees with people because that's where like real connection is going to happen for me. Whereas other people, it might be a public persona. Like, I think that people think of branding so narrow sometimes of like, it's my website and my social channels and the colors I use. Your brand is how people intersect with you no matter where you are, digitally or in real life. And so I think being able to say, like, where is it that I naturally have energy? Look at where opportunities are coming for you. If it is your network over your social, babe, maybe you don't need to be on social. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be something you pursue, but come up with why it's important to you. The other piece that I think is trying to be everywhere at once. Think that we like, especially as solopreneurs, like we're trying to run like we're some enterprise company when it's like a party of one and a half, you know? And so it ends up being these like either repetitive messages across everywhere or diluted to the point where it's like, I don't even feel like that was saying something. So again, I think that we have this fallacy that it has to be hard in order to be good. That is a story that's told is like, pushed through. And yeah, there is some of that, but life will be hard enough that you will push through even when you don't try to. Like, trust, go where it's easy. Like, if you naturally, and this was a huge thing for me, LinkedIn is a place I spent 10 plus years in corporate. I have, 6,000 followers on LinkedIn with very little like follower strategy. Every time I would try to go build an Instagram platform that had 102 followers, and I'm like, hey guys, like, didn't work. But
Right.
every time I put a piece of thought leadership or a hot take or whatever on LinkedIn, it would get reaction. It would get business development leads. It would lead to and for some reason in my mind, I'm like, well, to be a media company, we have to be on all these channels. No, we are for women navigating transition, and majority of those start inside of corporate. Go where the corporate ladies are.
Right. Go where the people are that you want to serve. And
Yes.
yes, the lean into what feels good. Because if it doesn't feel good, I'll tell you what, you will find a way to not do it. And I tell people all the time, there are a lot of things that you can do, but branding and marketing and all that stuff is a wheel. And
Yes.
every facet of it is just a peg and a piece of the wheel. And so, do I think that you should have a social media presence? Yes. Where do you lean in and where do you spend your time? That all depends on where are your people. And
Uh-huh.
then when you are creating the content, lean into what feels good. Because right now, well, it's changing again. For a while there, it was reels. You had to be
Yeah,
on video,
totally.
right? Well, for those of us that are super uncomfortable talking on video, that is a challenge. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I would have a window carved out for content creation.
Uh-huh.
And my social media gal was like, it should take you no more than 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, 100 takes later, I
Uh-huh.
haven't even done
Uh-huh.
one. And
Uh-huh.
now I'm mad and I'm burnout. And then the next time that social media content creation block came up, guess what I did? Anything but.
Resisted, procrastinated.
I
Oh,
filmed
yeah.
it with anything
Yeah.
but. And I'm like, listen, I'm a very dedicated, and if you know me, I'm an implementer unless
Mhm.
there's resistance and it's something that I'm not comfortable with. And then
Yes.
I'm like, there's uncomfort to a point. Video, we fought. That's another reason the podcast was born. I was like, you want video? Fine. I'm going to talk to people because I can talk to people on video all day long.
Yes. A conversation is different than self-directing content.
Yes. And just sitting there staring at a camera, I'm like, oh my gosh. But the second that I'm having a conversation,
Yes.
I forget that we're recording.
Yes.
Even now, like I keep dancing with this light that's coming through my window because I'm not even paying attention to myself. I keep looking at you and then every once in a while I'm
Yeah.
looking over. But that was my version
Yeah.
of content creation that
Yes.
felt easy. And then now that's what I've
Exactly.
embraced. And then I've also been okay to say, like, that trend is not for me. If you want to dance across your living room, go for it.
I love it for you.
If that brings you joy and you can do that, great. Not my cup of tea. Not
Yeah.
going to happen. Like, it's just not. But leaning into what feels good, what can you
Mhm.
do consistently? And then
Yes.
realizing that it may not be for you. And also what phase? Because I did networking. I'm a very big in person person.
Yeah.
I love to be in the right rooms.
Same.
I can do so much better if we get to meet and talk on
Mhm.
video or in person, even better. But then I committed to a networking group that was phenomenal and bringing a lot of success to a lot of people. What I didn't realize though was that a weekly commitment was a lot for a one person show.
Yes.
And so I start looking around the room and I'm like, why is it that it's very successful for all of these people? What dawned on me the other day, the one thing that a lot of these people have in common is that while they're sitting in that networking room, somebody else is running their business.
Yep. It's a very
Sales are,
important thing to understand the stage of companies and who the peer
yes.
group is.
And what are you saying yes to? And is that impacting your revenue time? Because this was, it just hit me like freaking wall the other day where I went, oh my gosh, I've said it before in some form of fashion. Like, I don't just dedicate on sales. I don't have a sales rep. Like, there's a
Yeah.
difference. Then the other day, it literally hit me where I was, if I'm sitting in here, I'm hopefully cultivating a relationship for a future
Yes.
revenue, but I have blocked this time where I cannot produce a service or do something that is revenue generating today. Whereas some of these companies in here, they've got a person that's sitting in here,
Yeah.
but there's still somebody out there generating consistent revenue. So whether it be that they send a sales rep or they have a crew that's out there. So you have to really evaluate the opportunities and decide, is this the right opportunity for you right now? And if
Yes.
you are a solopreneur or you're a one and a half, because, I'm at a place now where I have a VA, but she can't go anywhere in person for me. She's
Right.
helping me on the back end keep things running, but I'm still the
Mhm.
face of everything that
Mhm.
I do. I have to really make a decision as to where am I spending my time and how much time am I blocking out to network that's cutting into my revenue? Like I can't,
Yeah.
there's only so much I can do. So you have to evaluate all the opportunities based on what level of business are you at? How many people are on your team? What can you do?
I think it's so important to highlight that there are times in our business when we can place bets for future revenue. And then there's times in our business when we have to double down on the revenue we need today. And I can give an anecdote. We were, for the first few years of our business, because of the success of the podcast, we were building really a media company, like an entity in which we were creating content, executive producing projects on TV and film, live events, etc. And so we did a lot of that. We always coached on the side. It was a little bit of this like, we do that to pay the bills, kind of like that's too small. That's just one to one. We want to be the big. And there was a lot of bets on that of, going to speak. We got to speak at Sundance. We got to do events at South by Southwest. Like we did these things again, very perceived positions of power. What is outwardly successful, right? That gives me permission to leave the big 6-figure job if I'm like, but I spoke at Sundance, right? Again, the ego in there, the stories of what makes it permissible to walk away from something. And then we were doing fundraising. And so we were making a lot of bets. We were pulling back on near-term revenue generating on the expectation that we were going to have funding coming in and being able to do this. So we pull back on all these activities and we're doing a $3 million raise. We're like, this is going to be great. We're going to create the next docuseries that changes the world, all this kind of stuff. During this time, I was pregnant, second time. So like literally pitching people while like DMing my co-founder, like, think I might be in labor. That is not a gold star. That is like, I was thinking to myself because we neglected all the revenue. We did not take care of ourselves. And I think that this happens. It was a hard-earned lesson, took it on the chin. And then there were so many external factors from just the world. War in the Middle East, woman running for president, that a lot of impact dollars that previously would have gone toward a project like ours were being dispersed in other areas. We had a great product. We had great talent. We had a lot of yeses. It did not yield the bets we thought. And so this was future revenue. It did not come through. That's going to happen, right? We took a big swing. You're not going to win them all. Then the pivot in our business could not be for last year. It was right sizing. We had sustained ourselves on 0% interest credit cards by, what we had in the bank, like real things on the hope it was going to pay off. It didn't yield the result we thought. And so last year it was like, we got to double back down on now revenue. We can't be focused on 18 months. And you better believe it sucked to have to go to the places that we were so excited to be in and say to those peer groups, like, hey, we actually have to bow out because in this season of our business, we got to like take care of ourselves. I can't be resentful of the business because it's not feeding me, because it's not helping me pay my bills. And that's a real part. It's not the glamorous part of entrepreneurship, but to bring in the thread here, personal brand. I think that one of the things that we've done in our company by saying fuck it all is it gives a giant permission slip for us to say things can change. You can communicate your way through it. And as long as you are living in integrity with yourself, the right people are going to come along. It doesn't mean that it's not hard. Doesn't mean that my ego wasn't bruised. Doesn't mean that I felt disappointed. All of that was still true, but I could live in alignment because that is our brand story. And the brand is really a reflection of Katie, my co-founder, and I.
Which you have to be able to go to sleep with at night. And that's the piece where a lot of us struggle to let go of, because you were like, I can see the vision. I can see the hope of the future. And I'm putting all of this
Yes.
in. Well, yes, build for tomorrow, but live for today. Like you
Mhm.
have got to make sure that the decisions that you're making are also going to pay your bills now. Because
Yeah,
I've
nothing
been guilty
really
of the
communicates confidence of like, give me $3 million to go build this thing when I'm like, whew, we are barely getting by over here. Like, that's not attracting abundance. You're not giving like, wow, she really's got it together. And so I think that like we don't even realize the way these things, we think we're making decisions, but the way it affects our energy, the way it affects our like entire being. And that's where I say it's a spiritual journey for me, because it is so much more internal attunement than external
right,
anything.
right.
That it is like a self mastery that I find entrepreneurship to be. And I think that's true of anybody that's a builder. It's addicting. It's amazing. It can be such a high when you're like, I know myself and I'm in so much alignment, but it takes a lot of intentionality.
Well, and then you get excited about something. I don't know about you. Like I get excited
Oh
about
my
it. And
God.
I'm like, yes, I'm all in. And then that
Yes.
fire and that competitive spirit, which I think a lot of us have. And then it's the being okay to let it go, to realize, oh, that's not working. And then I don't know.
Yes.
Sometimes my husband jokes because he's like, so glad that you listened to somebody else, because it took somebody else
Yeah.
saying it. I was like, no, I mean, I heard it from you, but I wasn't ready to accept it yet. Like that's where I have to work through it sometimes. I can hear it. And then
Yes.
sometimes I have to get angry first because I have to work through
Yes.
that it
Yes.
didn't work out the way that I wanted. And I had full intention. And then now I have to pivot. And so leaning into sometimes that comes back to my alignment. I'm finding that if I start with, does this align? I'm not as angry if I realize it doesn't and I have to
Mhm.
pivot. It doesn't feel like a failure. It feels like I'm making the change because I'm striving for alignment versus
Yeah.
striving because I just set out to say that I was going to do it.
Completely. It's, again, it's the external validation or accolade, but to then say, like, I'm going to measure myself on how much alignment I'm maintaining. So when you say no, you actually just accomplished your goal. You
Yes.
didn't like pivot to something you didn't want. Oh my God, I have to put that down. You're like, no, I'm just getting more aligned. It's so like, that's the power of language and story. And that's what we work with these women is like, we are telling stories all the time. And to become an expert of the anatomy of story, are you being the narrator? Are you being the main character? Are you being the director? Or are you being like just the side character who's getting shit on? And we are all of those all the time.
We get to be so many things. A woman is just so many facets. Like we don't compartmentalize the same way. Okay, so if anyone's been listening and they're like, "Cool, where do I even start with that?" Like, "Oh, that sounds fantastic," in some
Yep.
like crazy woo woo world. But
Uh-huh.
for real though, is it? What's your first step? Like if someone's been listening and they're like, "Okay, how do I even put that into practice?"
Yep. So I always say start with your personal values. And I'm going to push people to say, what are your top two? Like that is the consistent advice I give anyone because they are two values that they will become like your North Star of when you are or are not in alignment. You can use any, just Google it, but we love the Brene Brown Dare to Lead. It's the value set. She has a list of just a tremendous amount. Again, quick search online will give you that. The way, if you say, like, I don't know my values, I want 100 of these to be my values, or I see myself in five, there's two questions that we always ask our women. When do you feel most in your power? This can be a singular moment in time, like, I remember this one time XYZ happened, or it could be every time I do XYZ. So, like, when do you feel most in your power? And that's different than like, when do you feel best about power? Like, oh my God, I am so me right now. I am that girl. And then when do you feel your power shaken? And so that is a stutter step, that gut punch when you feel, oh, I really wanted that, or oh, I can't believe they said that, or whatever it is. Every single time when you map where are you most in your power and when is your power shaken, you will find a through line. When you are in your power, your value is being illuminated. When your power is shaken, it is not being honored. That will help you get down and distill those top two.
That's so
That
powerful.
to me allows you to start aligning to everything because that's a filtering system, right? You got to be this tall to ride the ride. These are my two values. What in work is meeting that? What in my relationship is meeting that? And you can begin, and I always say, like, release urgency. Trust that this process could be 6 months, could be longer, but I like to set a stage. Don't start with women unless we're working with 6 month containers. You need enough life. Like, we all know the retreat high. We know when you listen to that podcast or work with a coach and you're like, yes, I have it. And then 2 weeks later, you're doing none of the things
Right.
that you know to do.
You
You
went
need
back
to
to your
go
life.
through enough. Yes, you go back to life, to the responsibilities, for your period to come, for like the weather to change. Like you need to live through seasons to have that power shaken again to begin to understand. A very, very easy example I'll give is in my last job, my direct boss, the CEO of the company, his top value was loyalty. My top value is authenticity. Authenticity and loyalty are in conflict with one another. Loyalty says the group over everything. Authenticity says I have to be free to be me. So being able to have that and name that, it's not they're good or I'm bad, or it's now just, wow, we are operating from different places. Is there a way that I can get to more loyalty or my authenticity can be in service of that? Is there a way that his loyalty can honor my authenticity? Like that becomes now a non emotional way to actually have a productive conversation with someone else or with yourself. And so that to me is like, if something feels off, it is because perception's reality. Start with values. That is in a hugely empowering place that again removes a lot of the shame and guilt and emotion of like, I should be happy or this is it really that bad? It allows you to name it. Language is power. We cannot manage what we cannot talk about.
That. Wow. Okay. I feel like that's going to wrap up. We're going to leave with that note because if you have been listening to this entire episode and you walk away with nothing else, hold on to the fact that your top two values can define and shape anything, and the language is power because that's the story that we tell ourselves. And then authenticity. At the end of the day, we can't sustain anything that's fake. So if you're
Mm,
trying to be a version of yourself that you truly cannot buy into, it's not going to work. It's going to be a consistent struggle where you're going to find if you are authentic and you are leaning in and you're holding on to what truly drives you. And we talked about it earlier for myself. If it truly aligns, It's not hard for me.
Mhm.
It may be difficult in the moment, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to drive, whatever, like
Yes.
that could be hard in the moment, but when I'm driving, I'm not upset about it. Now,
Mhm.
on the flip side, if you're making me get up to do something that I really don't want to do, it's the whole thing is grueling. Like there is no cup of coffee that's going to bring me joy. Like there is nothing.
Yes.
Like I'm just really unhappy about it. But the power of your values and then what you can name and identify, because then
Yes.
you can decide I'm in alignment. This is no shame. This is no, you failed. This is no nothing. You can really pull it back into you're winning because you're making decisions based on what is best for you.
Mhm. Yes. Nailed it. It's like you're really good at this whole podcast
I
thing,
mean, that's what I
wrapping
keep
it up in a bow.
hearing. So, on another note, talk about hard. There's days where I'm like, this has been fun. Well, this part's the easy part. It's the editing and getting it out there into the world that
Oh,
I'm like,
feel that deeply.
girl, like,
Mhm.
do I really want to keep doing this? And then I have amazing
Mhm.
conversations like this. I'm like, yes, yes, I do. Because there's no way I could have pulled this up for myself. It's having somebody like you having the conversation. So if
Yeah.
they've been listening, Kacie, and they're like, hey, I want to know more, or I have been looking for something like this, I need
Yes.
this type of support in my life, where can they find you?
The best way is both on LinkedIn and our email, itallmedia.co. If you go on our website, that has a lot about our process, our frameworks, credentials, all the things that help people get to know you, but you'll sign up for our newsletter there. And I think that is the best place to get to know us. As I mentioned, we're verbose ladies. We have a lot to say. So we're not spamming your inbox, but we are going to ask you to really marinate in our content. So when we give you something, it's thought provoking, it's meant to sit with you. You're meant to like stew in it like a great tea, like steep in it. And then LinkedIn, it's a place that I put out a lot of content, a lot of the things we've talked about today. These are my musings, my real time revelations, as well as a lot of the other women and storytellers that we love. The way we engage with women is if you're listening to this today and you're like, okay, I'm like curious enough, but I don't know that I'm like ready to go 6 months in. Book a session with us. We do a free discovery kind of chemistry test for everyone. We spend about an hour with you and you get two coaches for one. That's one thing that's really unique in our process. We joke that we're like the blonde and the brunette, but also the yin and the yang. I'm strategy. I'm coming in like, what is the business? What is the why, the values? And Katie, she's this incredible storyteller. She's really soulful. And so to have both of those present, I think is so helpful as people are navigating transition because you need both of those. Both are essential to navigating change. And those sessions, I would say, 75% of the time yield us working with someone because it's a great place. If you come out of that feeling like, I feel more affirmed in my power. I feel like I can see, the chemistry with these two coaches. I can see how change is possible. That's it. And this is not a hard sales pitch because what I've realized, I'm sure you've seen it with your business. If it is aligned for the people that hear it, it's going to be a no-brainer. And if
Yes.
it is feeling like a tension, I trust that the right time will come. Either you'll think about me 3 years from now or 6 months from now, or you're going to say like, hey, I'm just so glad I know this person exists. And the next time a colleague or a person at a coffee shop brings it up, is like, I'm trying to figure out who I am in this moment. You're going to think Kacie Lett Gordon, It All Media. And so I invite anyone that's listening, that's a great way to start spend time with our content.
Thank you so much. And if you've listened to this episode and you know of somebody that could benefit, please be sure to share and then hit subscribe so that you can listen to future conversations with amazing women like Kacie who are out there building, making an impact. And as always, continue to get out there and make your branded impact. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Branded Impact Podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's ready to unlock their rebrand era. And if you're ready for a brand that's rooted in authenticity and built for impact, one that truly reflects your story, your energy, and your evolution, let's connect. Head to brandingbyjoe.com or DM me on Instagram at brandingbyjoe. Thanks for hanging out. Now get out there, show up with purpose, and make your branded impact. I'll see you next week.